Good afternoon and welcome to the UK Genesis podcast. This is episode 12. I'm your host, Gary Jones, and joining me today is my co-host, is Ben Furphy. Hi, Ben.
Hello.
How are you today?
Good. It's Wednesday. It's middle of the week. Can't complain.
That's it. Hump day, I think, is the terminology for it. So it's all downhill from here on in.
Yeah.
And our special guest today is Piccia Neri. Good afternoon, Piccia. How are you doing?
Hello, I'm doing very well.
And whereabouts are you based?
I'm based in London, in Merry Dalston.
Excellent.
Yeah.
So, can you give us an introduction about yourself? Tell us who you are, what you do.
I'm a graphic designer. I do lots of things. I do obviously quite a lot of web design, but that's a more recent thing because given also my, age and long standing in the industry, I've obviously started with print, and when I started doing web design, I started straight with WordPress. I've worked a lot for cultural institutions. I've done a lot of work with cinema because I used to work for the British Film Institute in London. Before then, I'd done a lot of work for museums and other cultural institutions because I have an art history background. I do a lot less of that now, but I also do photography and a bit of illustration as well. In a nutshell, really.
Excellent. I mean, I looked at your portfolio and it's very, very varied. And kind of the amount of stuff that you're involved with, and kind of vice chairperson of this, and you're visiting lecturer and all sorts. So there's a lot going on that we can pick up and kind of get to. Just before for Ben jumps in with kind of some of the questions, which I know he's dying to, and there's a few key topics that I know he really wants to get into. If you've got any questions for Piccia today, then get him in on Twitter with the UK Genesis hashtag, and we'll get them asked throughout the show. Okay, over to Ben.
Brilliant. Well, so as you said in the introduction then, you are very, very skilled in various different areas. So I know one of the key things that you sort of do is the tutoring of a photography course, and that you have a passion, as I understand, for photography and web design. So how would you describe that fitting into your what you do?
It's an essential part. I mean, sometimes when you do and have a passion for many things, it can be quite difficult to make them all slot in. So what you have to work hard at is to make that into a strength rather than a drawback, because it can be if you do too much. But I love the fact that since I've learned how to take good photographs, the quality of my design work, I think, has really improved. Because obviously, as a designer, you know how to. Sorry, something's happened on my screen. Oh, hello.
Sorry,
yes. It does become much easier to pick good images, and your eye for images develops. So it has definitely made me a better designer. And when I take photos, I always think about how they are going to be used later on. And sometimes when I use my own photos in designs, I think, oh, actually, I didn't think about taking a center view of that, and I probably should have done that. So I think that even though obviously it's not possible for everyone to be able to do everything, but I always recommend whenever I do tutoring of any kind to at least have an idea of what or how things work in other disciplines, because it really is all interconnected to me, in my view. I don't know if that answered the question.
No, it's a good answer, and in a sense it sort of hooks into something I was reading the other day, and I don't know whether Gary has read it, but it was the article by Andrew Norcross on Medium. Did you see that, Gary?
I'm not sure I saw that one.
No.
Just before you carry on, Piccia, your webcam seems to have stopped.
Yeah, it's true that happened. So I wasn't sure.
There we go.
Yes,
You're
here
back.
I am again. Yes.
Sorry, carry on.
Yeah.
So sorry, Gary, I was just saying, did you see the article by Andrew Norcross on Medium?
Which was that topic?
It was to do with design or developers needing or designers needing to have an understanding of code.
Oh yeah, I think I might have read that. Yeah, I might have, and I so agree with that. I think I'm a very, very good example of that, in fact, because for a long time I sort of skirted around the issue and sort of tried to, you know, it was sort of, you could hear me arguing that it's a different set of, not so much a different set of skills, but a different mindset. And, you know, I could do what I do equally well. And the thing is, I now completely disagree with that. And I really think that visual designers should learn. They don't need to become developers or be particularly good at it, but at least understand what's involved, because there's no way, I think, you can design a good website if you haven't got a clue. I don't think you can. And then what I found fantastic when I started really getting into at least markup language, you know, HTML and CSS, is that you start getting so excited by it, and then it consumes you, you know, and you actually probably become quite good at it because you realize actually it's not rocket science. I think a lot of designers are scared of code, and there's no reason really.
Many a designer has been lost to the depths of development. Somebody said, I think, in the comment section. But no, I agree. I think one thing that I've found when I've been designing websites, I'm sure Gary has come across something similar, is that it's not necessarily that the designer needs to understand or be able to code the website. It's more that they need to be able to understand the limitations and the
Absolutely.
time it takes to code.
Absolutely.
So just coming back to, you know, sort of the first question, aside from the photography and the design, is there anything else that you do for clients, or do you tend to try and outsource other things?
I like outsourcing because it's always really, really good to have somebody else's vision, you know, step back from the project and get somebody else's, so that you don't suffer from proximity blindness. I've had projects where I could have possibly done the drawings, but I thought, no, don't. It's bad. It's sometimes also, if you freelance a lot, you tend to be too much of a one-man band, and I think that actually getting a team together is very good. And yes, I do try and outsource. And sometimes someone will just do it better than you because they have fresh eyes on the project. So yes, I do outsource.
Is it just you working, or do you have any people that you work with?
I have a number of people that I work with, in the sense that it's sort of a network of freelance collaborators that I know I can count on and that I can work with, and also going to the various WordPress meetups and the whole, you know, UK Genesis network, I think is really, really great. And I've also recently started collaborating with a great WordPress agency here in London who's got a brilliant, they're called Whole Grain Digital, and I work with them a lot.
Okay.
Yeah.
So obviously we've established that you're a big fan of outsourcing. Do you provide training for clients when you sort of deliver a website, or do you tend to, you know,
Absolutely. I think it's essential. It's really fundamental that you provide. I mean, because WordPress in general and Genesis in particular are really one of the things that makes them great is that they are easy to use, but they're only easy to use once someone has explained to you how to use them, because really they're not. It's a bit of a myth that you can learn WordPress in 5 minutes. You might be able to install it in 5 minutes if you know how to do it, but you don't learn it in 5 minutes. And I think that training is essential, and I think that my clients really, really appreciate that. I've recently had very good feedback from clients for precisely that reason. So I try, and I'm kind of fairly new to blogging, and it's difficult to find the time for it, but what makes me blog usually is because a client will need a reference, an article, you know, a reference for them to be able to do certain things that I've trained them on. And I always include at least a couple of hours sitting together in front of WordPress and in front of the site to train the client. Yes, I think it's essential, because also I think it's very helpful also in the sense that then they realize actually how long it takes, you know, to do a good design, why it's difficult, what makes it work, what doesn't, and why maintenance is so essential, and why they should pay for maintenance and so on. Because I'm sure that we all know that any web designer or developer these days knows that it's difficult to educate clients that it takes time, and it's long, you know, it takes a long time, and it's difficult to keep things running smoothly, and so that's also part of the training.
Yeah, so I mean that sort of answers the next question. So we'll jump to the one after that. Obviously it sounds like you've got quite a good after-sales process, but in terms of once you take somebody on, what's your workflow from, you know, them signing that contract up until you know, sort of delivering the website, so to speak?
The workflow, the very first thing is questionnaires, and for any kind of project, because as much as as you think you know a client, or a client thinks that they've explained their business to you, they probably haven't. Or there's probably things that they take for granted that you should know about them or about the business, but that's not the case. So I've got questionnaires that I've developed, and I keep updating and upgrading, and I've now got an online version of them, and I get even prospect clients sometimes, because it gives them, even before they've signed the contract, it gives them an idea. I show them the questionnaire because it gives them an idea of my thought process and how it's going to work. So also it makes them understand that they also need to give me something if they want something good back, basically. So okay. that's the first part of the process, and then after I get the questionnaires back filled in, I then write a brief, because unless you're working with a design agency, it's actually quite difficult to get it, or a big organization, it's difficult to get a proper brief written out to you, and that's essential for good design. So I write the brief for them, and then that's what they sign off on. If they sign off on the brief, then everybody knows what they're going to get. And the brief, obviously the brief is outlined a bit in the contract, but it's always good to have a sort of deeper, more more so detailed structure to the job.
So in a sense, when you're pitching to the client before they actually sign off, you develop a more succinct brief of what the project will involve, and then once they sign off, you delve more into it and sort of go, this is what you're going to get, this is not what you're going to get. And
exactly.
Exactly. Okay. In terms of, you know, sort of once you get past that point, do you typically handle the entire process, or do you try to, you know, sort of break it down to, you know, if you're doing design for the project, then you don't do development. If you do, you know, development, you don't do design, or do you still do everything yourself?
I try to leave something out and outsource. Like, for instance, if there's a responsiveness issue or something like that, I will find someone that deals with it, because otherwise it becomes too much, and you wake up, you know, if you have a couple of projects going on, or three sometimes, or sometimes five, there is no way that you can do everything, because you run the risk of really missing out on very important details. So I will outsource, and usually it's the development that I try and get someone else in to think of, because it needs so much. I mean, also my development skills are limited. They're only limited to front end generally, so I don't want to make mistakes, and you need to be so 100% sure that you're doing the right thing that sometimes you can't. If you got your client relations hat on, you can also be dealing with development issues, I don't think.
Okay. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
quite a smart way of approaching it. Within that process, I mean, are there any particular tools that you use for managing the project? You said that you, for example, have the questionnaires and that you've got an online version. Is that
Yeah.
just something that you've built yourself, or is that using a tool off the shelf? And you know, well, what does the rest of your workflow tool suite look like?
The questionnaires are just forms on my website. So I think, what did I use? I think maybe Ninja Forms. That's all they are, and they're on my website because I think it's a nice way. It allows me, you know, get people to my site as well. I used to use Basecamp as a project management tool, which is basically a web-based project management tool, and it's great in the sense that I hate, even when I am, you know, if I'm freelancing for other agencies, they rely on email to communicate about project. It's a nightmare because then, you know, they will mention, for instance, oh, you need to also design to 960 pixels, and they say it's in passing in an email, and then I can't find it, and I can't remember what it was. So tools, I don't use Basecamp anymore. Now I use something else called Proof Hub. But it's great because basically all the emails that relate to one project are they're like threads in the same, all held in the same place. They're all in chronological order. There's no problem. You know, a client can't say, "Oh, you didn't say that." You can say, "No, I did," and you reply to it, rather because the email it takes so much longer to find that little detail that you're talking about. And then you can also post proofs, and clients can write comments directly on the proofs visually. There's loads of various tools that do that these days, but also I use another tool that I love is Harvest, which is basically a timer. You can time how long a task will take you and whether it's billable or not billable. So I use it also for my own projects because I do a lot of self-initiated projects that don't make me money straight away, and I always measure. And then it's great because you can invoice from there as well directly. And so these are fantastic tools. But I'm sure I'm only there's a free agent as well, which is for accounts. But there are so many tools. I think that there's a tool specific to web design, which is for proofing. That is it Insightly? I think it is Insightly. So I use a lot of InVision.
Yeah.
Yes.
Insightly is a CRM, I think.
It is.
Yeah.
Yes, you're right. Yeah. So yes, there are a lot of really useful tools that I use.
Yeah. What do you use to actually do the designs? Is it Photoshop or do you use something else?
I try and limit the time in Photoshop. I mean, Photoshop, I don't think that Photoshop is a great layout tool. I use it because most people seem to prefer, if I am designing something that someone else will code, usually they expect you to use Photoshop, but I haven't had the time. There's the Macau, I don't know how to pronounce it, Macau, which is or rather prototype, Macau, yeah.
Yeah.
There are other prototyping tools that I think are much better than Photoshop, because Photoshop was never really a design tool. The new version, the CC 2015 version, actually is much better because it's got artboards now, and it's got how do you call this, scratch area where that you have in InDesign at the side of the image, so that you can put arc things outside. That you have in Illustrator. I've never used Sketch, but maybe I should try it out, because even with those new things such as the artboards and the scratch area, I still don't think that Photoshop is the best layout tools, and yet I keep having to design in Photoshop. I think that Photoshop is, I mean, it's really, even with the artboards, it's still to me a one image tool. And the thing is, it does amazing photo manipulation things amazingly well, and I think that's what it should be. And here I am, having just designed a whole website about 1,000 different pages in Photoshop, but that's what I was being asked to do. That's what the project started before, and when I stepped in, it was already all designed in Photoshop. So that's how I did it, and it's fine. I do like it, but if I'm initiating it, I probably will think about different tool.
Okay. Who would you describe as your target audience?
That's a very good question, because it used to be definitely mostly cultural institutions, of lots of film festivals, but now it's that sort of landscape is changing for me. Not that I don't like it anymore, but working with cultural institutions has got certain pitfalls to it that you can actually do more creative work than that, and small businesses, I would say, are my target audience. I would say small businesses with an interesting proposition. I've had someone approach me recently they're a startup, and they are doing they deal with wearable technology. They're doing LED signs for cyclists to wear on their back, which are both about safety and about having an ad on your back, basically. Or one of my favorite best clients is Body Me, which is a high-tech startup that does 3D sizing, works with scanning and 3D sizing, and has a software that allows you to log on your size, and then get if a brand is signed up to the system, then you can buy clothes online and make sure they will always fit. But it's also got a lot of uses for health and fitness and so on. So I've stepped away from cultural stuff. It sort of happened, but actually these are the projects that I get excited about now. I really, but at the same time, I had a landscape gardener come to me recently because she liked my photos and she thought I could help. But definitely small, maybe medium, small to medium businesses, I really like that, because I've worked with big institutions, and it just doesn't, it's not ideal for me to have a lot of layers. Yeah. You know, I much prefer working with people, and I love the fact that you can get immediate results. Projects are handled and finished much more quickly, and clients are really, really grateful and really happy. And when they are, because you've changed something for them, you've taught them something they didn't know about, and you've made their life easier, or you've created something that really changes their life because they didn't have a website and now they do, and they see, you know, that opens up a whole new world. So that's something that I really like.
Okay. How do you price your projects? Is it project-based, hourly, or do you use value pricing?
Can you say that again? Because there was a bit of a break.
Sorry, how do you price your projects?
Approach.
Sorry, price.
How do you cost up?
Price. Sorry. Oh God, that is an eternally difficult one, isn't it? I always start by giving an estimate of how long it's going to take me, and certain projects are definitely more expensive than others because I know that I will have to outsource people that have different skills from mine because it's a complicated project and so on. But I always try, and another way in which I try to train my clients is to explain that really sometimes you shouldn't have a budget, because things may take longer than you think they do, or they will find out that actually their requirements grow with time. So I always tell them, to achieve this result, you will need at least 10 days, and this is what is going to get done in these 10 days. And usually when they see that that's really what happens, and you need to always tell them, keep them up to date with what you've been doing and be really transparent with it, and they usually always see that if there's more development to be done or more design work to be done, they completely understand that that's how it should be. And then in that case, you tell them, okay, I'm on the clock now. This is how much it's going to cost you, and this is what I'm doing and what we're going to achieve in that time. So that's how I do it, but I don't find it easy. I don't find it easy pricing. It's not, well, I'd rather, when I have someone that handles that for me, I actually really, really like it, which is why now working with Whole Grain Digital is very nice, because they have similar clients. It's a very good fit because they've got similar clients to mine, a very, very, very lovely ethos, and but they do that bit. I mean, I don't mind talking to, I love talking to clients. I really love that human contact. But the whole agency side of things, the account handling, the accounting, is not my favorite bit. I have to be honest.
I don't think anybody enjoys that, to be honest.
Yeah. I don't think many designers actually enjoy that. And the ones that do enjoy that actually end up doing that and designing less,
Yeah, exactly. So one of the other questions is, do you work from home? But am I right in guessing you work from an office, or is it?
I do, yeah, indeed. I've tried the working from home, and unfortunately, because I would save money, but it just doesn't work for me. I need the buzz, I need the contact, I need the other people around me. Yeah, it's much nicer for me.
Okay.
Yeah.
How long have you been working in an office for then?
It's since forever, really. I've worked from home. I worked at I've always freelanced, but I had some time at the British Film Institute, and then I started part-timing there. And when I started part-timing, then I was working from home because I was going out there 3 days a week. So it was fine. I didn't need, I had enough interaction in my life that actually working from home was lovely at that time. But then then I sort of, freelancing at the BFI got quite irregular, and I worked from home for a while, and it was really, as the saying goes, it was doing my head in. I end up just not leaving the flat for way too long. I need to go out into the world. So I came back to a studio that I had before, which is here in Dalston, which is now trendy. But when I first, in 2007, I moved with a group of other people that I was sharing a studio with in Shoreditch. We moved up to Dalston because Shoreditch got too expensive, as is the case, in London, just keep going out and out and out. And that was 2006, I think. And Dalston was not cool or trendy then, I can assure you. It really felt like, the wild east. Yeah, so basically on and off I've been in Dalston for a long time now.
You'd have to go to Enfield or Broxbourne or somewhere like that to film.
Yeah, it's now. Yeah, I mean it's now all moving out to Leytonstone and Wanstead, but it's as expensive as here. It's not cheaper, so
yeah.
Yeah, I think I'm going to Enfield next.
So, just as we were talking about a minute ago, next question is: would you ever go back to being an employee at another company? I mean, if Whole Grain, for example, turned around and said, "We'd love you to come in-house," would you take that, or would you still want to have the freedom and the sort of flexibility of being freelance?
Well, Whole Grain are wonderful, and one of the reasons why is that they have said, do you want to, if there's a project that needs photography, please, can you help? Which is, that would be my problem. Being employed would mean I wouldn't do it unless I had the time to do other things as well. That's essential for me. I can't be doing just one thing, because not necessarily because I would get bored, but just because I think that's my strength. I think it's a bit of a waste if I do just one thing, then I don't think you're sort of getting the best out of me. So I wouldn't want to be an employee with just one job description. No, I don't think I could. I really definitely don't think I could.
Cool.
Okay, we'll pick up on some of the questions that have been coming in from Twitter, particularly Jackie, who has just been sending a flood of questions. So we'll run through some of those. She started off, you saying about, I think it's on the UK Genesis website about the podcast as well, saying that Jackie says choosing photographs that integrate well into design is essential. It's part of the design.
Absolutely, it makes a design, and you know, the whole stock photography issue is a huge one, but yes, I think that's why you used to hire a photographer when you needed to illustrate a project. And sometimes, I mean, sometimes you can get really good stock photography these days, but sometimes you just can't. You know, you can't, not necessarily because it's not good photography, but just because it's good, but not, maybe it's a good photo, but you needed a different angle of that same thing, or, you know, so yes, I could not agree more with that. And I think that sometimes if you have good photography, really the design can be incredibly simple, I think. And I've had a good time recently with clients that understood that and agreed to, they realized that you can't get photos for free and then have a really slick and great looking premium website that offers a premium service. So at least they agreed to Shutterstock subscription, and not that I agree with the Shutterstock model. Don't get, I mean, either if you do get me started on this one, there'll be quite a lot that I can say about it, because I sell on Shutterstock, but I think that I really hope that kind of microstock photography model will die a death. I really hope so. For a very long number of reasons. I mean, if people are interested, then I can expand on this, but it's a big subject. But yes, couldn't agree more. Photography is essential to a good project, or photography or illustration. Yeah.
Yep. Okay. Jackie then says, what pressure points do your clients struggle with after deployment?
Maintenance. You have to pay for maintenance. That if the site breaks after a while for any reason, it's not my fault, and you should pay for the hours that I need to. I mean, it's not my fault. I'm not saying it's never my fault, but do you know what I mean? It's a site is a live thing, and there are, you know, if you add a plugin, or if there's an update of something, or of WordPress, or it needs looking after. And I think it's a really good question, because it's something that I've recently made a change to the contract where I say something to that effect. I say that I will offer assistance up to, say, 2 weeks after, but then after that, maintenance should be paid for. And actually, what I suggest is to use services like WP Curve, $99 a month, absolutely amazing WordPress, probably better than me, because I'm not a developer, so it's really worth it. So that's another very important part of the training. So yes, thanks for the question, very good question.
Yep. She then says, would you share why you don't use Basecamp anymore? You said you'd moved on to Proof Hub, which Jo incidentally says she's now checking it out, as she loves project management tools as well. Yeah,
great. Basecamp I loved for a long time, but they haven't kept updating it enough. They haven't been doing enough to the proofing just wasn't good enough anymore. Also, it doesn't. I want something that works with Harvest, with a timer. There's no way you can time projects. ProofHub doesn't do that yet, so you can add timesheets, but you can only do that manually. But when I signed up for them, I asked them, will you work with Harvest? And they said, yes, we're working on the API now. So ProofHub and Harvest, which is my beloved tool, will very soon be integrated. And Basecamp was the daddy of them all, but they haven't. I think they've been quite a bit complacent. So they've developed other tools like High-Rise and things that I don't use as much. And also the interface didn't look great anymore. I just thought, you know what, it's time for a change, and they haven't done enough for me. They haven't developed the things that I would have wanted them to develop. So yeah, that's why. I think there was another key reason that right now I can't remember, which is really rubbish. But I think it must have had to do with timesheets.
Excellent, thank you.
Yeah.
And Jackie, last comment and question from Jackie at the moment. Thank you for questions, Jackie. She says she completely agrees that Photoshop is not an easy tool for design, and then she goes on to say, do you do any designs in the browser?
I design in the browser quite a bit, yeah. I mean, sometimes I just really to be honest, it really depends on the project, but sometimes when the project has a limited budget, I might just do CSS modifications straight in WordPress. You know, just straight in the browser, and that's it. It really depends. Sometimes there actually isn't the money to do proofs, to do proper mock-ups beforehand. So yes.
Yep. Okay, if you've got any questions for Piccia, then please use the UK Genesis hashtag. One of the things I wanted to pick up with you about is I mentioned at the start of the show that you've got a very varied portfolio, and actually the portfolio on your website is very unique in terms of kind of the interface and how it's displayed and so on. It's absolutely fascinating. How did you first come up with kind of that sort of way of showing it, so that kind of format of portfolio, and kind of second part to that is how did you decide which of your varied projects would go into that portfolio to show off your skill set?
Thank you for the compliments. It's funny enough, it's work. I did a lot of looking around for portfolio themes. It's not a Genesis theme. However, because when I chose it, I didn't have enough knowledge of WordPress and Genesis. I think that now I would be able to make Genesis look like that, but I did think that it was unique when I chose it, which was, I think, 2013 or 12. I thought it's called Concept with a K and a Z. And I think it's I'm glad that people seem to like it a lot. I've done a lot of modifications. Because I have different skill sets, initially I actually got a developer to modify that for me, and I used to have 3 portfolios, one for design, one for photography, and one for illustration. But then I realized, because it's very difficult to find all the portfolio themes, I think without exception, in my experience of long searching and so on, have the limitation that they only show one type of portfolio. They don't really work for very, very varied portfolios. So the only thing I could do was hire someone to develop it for me and give me 3 portfolios. But then I realized that it was just getting too much. It was just huge amounts of stuff. So the selection is another one of the things that I hate doing. So it's a very good question. Now what I tend to do is I tend to not think about it so much, and I tend to have the most recent things up there, or the projects that I really love, even though they're not so recent, or the jobs that I want to get more of, or the jobs that show off more than one set of skills. Like, for instance, I have now on the Liqua website, which is this juice bar in Spain, and I particularly like that project because it's got web design. It's got, well, obviously WordPress. That is a Genesis theme, because now I only use Genesis, especially if it's for clients. I may not use Genesis for myself, but if it's for clients, it's just a guarantee that things are going to go right. So I use Genesis for clients. But also it shows off my photography that I took for that project, and the logo design, which is not quite illustration, but anyway, it's Illustrator and shows off a different skill set. So that's kind of what I do, how I choose things now. But I modify, if you look at the way Concept, the theme that I use for my portfolio works, I've done a lot of CSS modification, but also the way the projects are displayed is very different. Using colors on the tiles is my modification. That's not the way that's not the way it looks, but it's almost inevitably, it seems to really lure people in. I have a very, very, very low bounce rate which makes me think, don't change it. I've thought actually about having a very similar homepage, but instead of having, because basically the site goes straight to the portfolio, I've thought about actually having the colored squares, but they give you an option to go to different parts of the website, because what does happen is that people don't go to the blog much because it's sort of up there in the menu. But so I might change that, and I'll see if the traffic changes after that. But for now, the colorful squares seem to really work. I mean, people just want to go there. So it's nice that something happens when you go on them as well. So yeah. But it's been a very nice exercise in reducing, going from an absolutely humongous site, which had each section was as big as the whole site is now, and now it's really toned down, pared down. It's not been easy, but I find that letting go is great, and learning not to hoard so much. But having said that, all my old sites are still live somewhere. I'd never throw away a site. I just park it somewhere else. They're still they all still exist.
Absolutely.
Even I've got 2 old Flash sites even.
There's still Flash sites.
Yeah, I do. Yeah.
Okay, so we first met at WordPress London, one of the meetups, and if anybody's looking at WordPressLondon.uk, there's another meetup next week. I think it is 23rd, and there's a few Genesis people going along to that. So if you're local to London, feel free to come along. If you go to wpldn.uk, you'll find there's a meetup link, and you can go from there anyway. But Piccia, have you been to any WordCamps or any other kind of groups, perhaps not a WordPress group, but any other local groups related to your works?
Yeah, I've gone to WordPress User London, which is where I met Wholegrain Digital, who are this great agency I'm collaborating with that I mentioned earlier. So again, incredibly, I love meetups, they're brilliant. And I've, of course, gone to WordCamp London now in March, and again, I've met people that have been incredibly useful to me. And then I go to a lot of sort of more design-related things, more than just strictly WordPress. But I love the WordPress London meetups, and yeah.
So you're there next week?
No, because I'm going to Italy on holiday, I'm afraid, so I can't be there. And I really miss it. I mean, it sounds quite nerdy, but it's true. I'm really sorry if I have to miss a WordPress meetup.
So it says on your website that obviously we know you're Italian, and you also do, is it French and
Spanish?
Spanish. It was there
yes.
Somewhere. Do you have many projects that are either multilingual or only in a non-English language that you work on?
Yes. This recent job that I mentioned for this juice bar in Valencia in Spain, and I have a few ongoing clients in Italy still. Yes, it comes up quite a bit. Yes, I really enjoy it. It's well, it comes, obviously I'm Italian, so that comes quite natural. Sometimes, in fact, it's now becomes almost a bit difficult to work in, especially WordPress. I just and I'm doing a website now for an Italian writer, again strictly Genesis. So yes, it's quite normal for me. So that's also, it's interesting because it's of course I've had to learn about localizing WordPress and localizing all the various plugins and so on. So it's very good to keep you on your toes and make you learn even more.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What's the best thing, the best and the worst things about kind of WordPress and Genesis that you see it?
I think the best thing about both WordPress and Genesis, the first best thing that comes to mind is the community. That's the first best thing. And it's, in fact, it really changes how you work on your own as a freelancer, because you could definitely not isolated. It completely takes the feeling of isolation away. So that's the first thing, and that applies both to WordPress in general and Genesis in particular. And then the worst thing, I think, but this is more WordPress and Genesis as an extension, is that people think, I don't think it should be advertised as such an easy thing, because it isn't. You know, I didn't find it easy when I first approached WordPress. I didn't find it easy at all. I know, in a way, it's wrong to call it difficult, but it's complex. It's not something, and I recently read on Facebook the comment of a friend that said, oh my God, I'm having a nightmare. Whoever said this was child's play, it's so difficult. And I replied saying, yes, of course, you need someone to, that's why I train my clients, because I don't want them to say, oh, WordPress is a nightmare. I want them to say, oh, what a great tool it is. But it's complex, and you need to learn it properly, basically. So, but I think that's the pitfall, and there's a lot of. So that's also why I like to blog about it, because there are a lot of things that I wish people had said to me, instead of saying, "Oh, it's so easy," "Oh, it's 5 minutes," I wish it had said things as they were. I think that now also it has become much easier, because there's so many video courses, and the community has gone so much stronger, and that it is easier. But I would say that those are the things. So again, it goes back to the community being the best about it.
Yep, excellent. Okay, we've got, just before we switch over to Ben to do your quick fire round, being picky with some of the questions there, Jackie's got one more. She says, do you have any favourite typography fonts that you use frequently?
Of course.
Could you share what they are, please?
Yeah, I love Herfler and Co. So I've got a cloud typography account. So, and they're the guys behind the Obama font, which is, of course, I call it the Obama font. So it's the Barack Obama's logo, and I've used it in a lot of projects recently. But if I don't have a look at the name, it won't come, even though if it's my favorite font. It looks like Montserrat, or it looks a lot like a Google font, but of course it's much better. And if I can't remember the name, I'm gonna go crazy. So I'll move on to also that's where the font on my site comes from. It's a font on my site is called Verlag. And it was first developed by Herfler and Co. for the Guggenheim Museum, I think, and then made available to everyone. And I use that. And actually, I know that it probably slows my site down, and I just take it. I don't care. I just love it too much. And also, I love very much House Industries, and I love Nutriface, which has become ubiquitous as a font. In fact, I use it in my logo, but it's great. I think it's a modern classic. And these are not by any means the only ones, but they're the ones I end up using more frequently. And I realize they're all sans serifs, but I do like serifs as well.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. So, Gary, that's all the questions for the time being?
Yep, that's it.
Brilliant. Okay, so quick
Gotham.
fire round.
Is Gotham the font?
Sorry?
Is the font Gotham a variation of Gotham?
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much. I don't know why.
Jackie, you found it, and I'd found it. And,
thank you, because it's such an obvious. It's so obvious. I mean, you think of Batman and Gotham City, and it should come to you. Yeah. Anyway, thanks.
Fair enough. Okay, cool. So, quick fire round. The idea, obviously, being that short answers. We'll go through a couple of these quickly. So, what did you want to be when you grew up?
I wanted to be an anthropologist, like Margaret Mead, and then I wanted to be a photojournalist or a reporter going to war zones. And then I wanted to be an art historian. I had never had any idea I'd end up like this.
Fair enough.
But I'm very happy. I think it's the best outcome.
Do you use a Mac or a PC?
Mac since forever, since '92. Although now it's a bit. I don't love Apple as much as I used to, if at all. But still use a Mac.
Fair enough. Do you have any go-to plugins?
Yeah, I have I think there's quite a few. Yeah. Well, there's Yoast, the SEO. There's caching plugins like WP Cache, I think it's called, and I forget because I'm really rubbish with names, as you must have noticed by now. So yes, I've got quite a few that I go to.
Okay.
Sure.
Same vein, do you have a go-to child theme for Genesis? Or have you started?
Yeah, I need to change that though, because it's been Parallax Pro for a while, and now I've gone with Altitude. But I need to go somewhere else because it's starting to be, this Parallax thing is still like it, but I need to go somewhere else now. Yeah, but that's what it's been.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
How do you see WordPress changing over the next 5 years?
There's one thing that never comes up in meetups and WordCamps and whatever, and I've tried to ask other developers, and I've got questions that haven't quite convinced me, and that's to say what's going to happen with drag and drop design, because I have explored it. I bought a theme from Theme Forest, and it's huge. It's called, and it's all based on drag and drop design, and you can just basically what you see is what you get interface, and you just drag and drop stuff. And it was so bad that Theme Forest, who notoriously never give you refunds ever, which I think is wrong, but they just don't do it. They refunded me. They actually didn't even put up a fight. They just refunded me. And then I tried a WP MuDev theme that does the same thing, and it was an absolute and utter nightmare. And I got a refund from them as well. And then I've been told, other developers, serious developers, that told me to just use the Visual Composer within WordPress, but I haven't seen it in the development community and design community discussed enough. What's going to happen to WordPress if or when that becomes the norm? That you drag and drop, they use drag and drop designs. I don't like. I am born a what you see is what you get designer. That's the way I've always worked. I learned to code later, and I'm a visual person, but I don't like it. I hate it. I love the fact that it just happens behind the scenes, and I know what it's going to look like. I never thought I would say anything like this, but I really don't like it, and I don't think it's going to mean that you don't need designers anymore, because clients, drag and drop has always existed. InDesign is drag and drop, Photoshop is drag and drop, and still clients need you. So it's not going to mean that clients don't need you, but in terms of development, I don't know, I haven't been able to get a clear, it never gets discussed, never comes up on the agenda, or hasn't yet, and I haven't got clear answers. There's people who've just said, oh no, it's absolute rubbish, it's not going to happen, but then there are themes like X, who are huge, they sell a lot, or WP MuDev that still, has a lot of people using it. I don't know why I had such a bad experience, but there's a lot of people using it. So I think that's a thing, and that's going to happen. And I would really I put it out there again to the community. What do you think is going to happen? How is that drag and drop design thing going to develop? And are developers and designers going to use it? Because I think the clients are. And I think that in a way, what's going to happen is that clients are going to think, oh great, I buy this theme and I'll be able to do it myself, and they think, oh no, actually no, it's really, really terribly difficult, so they will hire a designer or a developer again. So that's, I don't see that as a threat, but I do see it as something that is happening, is going to obviously become better with time, and I am really interested in seeing how the community is going to take it and what's going to happen.
What's your opinion, Gary?
Yeah, what is it?
I think
I'm so curious.
WordCamp Europe, wasn't the first one, so the second one, which I can't remember. Well, Bulgaria, I think it was.
Okay, yeah.
A presentation there from someone who had come up with this kind of. It wasn't necessarily a drag and drop. It was like a front end editor. And I've seen the customizer be used with a front end editor as well. So it's basically an instant preview. I think the drag and drop inherently has some accessibility issues.
Yeah.
So those who don't use keyboard for whatever reason, either because they're on a touch device or because they physically can't, I think the whole concept of drag and drop does have some issues for users there. Whereas a front end editor, if you can tab to the the heading and just be able to hit delete or some kind of keyboard shortcut to turn it into an edit mode and start editing and instantly preview it, or if you have got a trackpad or a mouse that you can use just to click on it or double click or something like that, then I think there's more scope for a more general front end editor implementation, and there's various different ones of those, using the customizer, not using the customizer, and so on, than drag and drop as what we kind of might know it as.
Yeah.
Okay. Tying into that, how much do you consider things like accessibility, internationalization, localization, and right-to-left scripts when you're building themes for clients?
You're asking me, not Gary, obviously. Yeah, it's a big issue. That's something else that I really try and educate clients on, because I've been educated. I mean, going to meetups is incredibly useful for that, because I don't think it was, I mean, before starting actually doing web design myself, I worked with developers who were, luckily for me, always very, very aware, very focused on accessibility and so on. But going to meetups has been incredibly useful for that, because definitely now it's priority for me, and I make my clients aware of that as well. Also, there are legal issues, there are legal sides to it. You are legally required for your site to be accessible. And as regards internationalization, obviously it's very present for me because I do work with other languages, so I am very much aware of how important it is, and how, like for instance, I considered Shopify as an e-commerce platform for certain projects that I was working on, but I've gone away from it because it just isn't localized enough. It isn't yet internationalized, and you have to physically, manually do it yourself, and it's just not a good use of my time. I have no doubt that it will happen later on, but not yet. And WordPress isn't there yet, but completely, but it's very, very, very internationalized. And actually, in the various contributors days that I've been on, which have been 2 or 3 by now, I always work on that. I always give a hand with that, because it's internationalization is very important. We all tend to be a bit too English centric, and I include myself in it because it's just so much easier than anything else. Yeah.
Cool. Are you, speaking of international events, are you signed up to watch Genesis Camp this weekend?
Yes, I am.
Which presentation are you looking forward to hearing the most?
I haven't made up my mind about that one. I'm not sure. I can't. Just in general, I think I'm really looking forward to it.
Cool.
Yeah.
In case you are not aware, there is the first big Genesis-specific conference is happening online this weekend, 18th to the 19th of July. You can find out more if you go to www.genesis.camp, CAMP, and yeah, there's a schedule and information on everyone who's presenting. We will be hosting a special edition of the show with Carrie Dills. Who else, Gary? Sorry.
Jackie, I don't know if that's Delia. I apologise if I've got that wrong, Jackie, for the amount of questions you always send in to us, so sorry for that. And Peter Schilling, and possibly one other who may or may not turn up as well. So there should be 5, maybe 6 of us for a panel. And we're going to be doing it. It's loosely discussing our particular session, loosely discussing how country-specific communities can help raise the profiles of each other through podcasts or some sort of directories, or how can we boost ourselves up, perhaps potentially through country-specific communities. Without being too insular, especially
Great.
Looking at ourselves outside of America is the obvious thing where the Copy Blogger and Studio Press obviously are based.
Cool.
Right.
So is there anybody who you would like to see on the podcast in the future?
This is a very good question. I can't think of anyone in particular. I tell you who would be amazing to speak to, I think, to have on the podcast is Rob Cubbon. robcubbon.com. He's a great, he's a Genesis guy as well, and he is, I would say, an internet entrepreneur, and someone else that I met at a WordPress meetup, and who has been incredibly useful to me and incredibly important and incredibly a wonderful element in the community. And he's very, I mean, if you look him up, he's very big, and I think his insight on Genesis and on WordPress and on the web and lots of things would be very, very interesting.
Cool.
Yeah, so I think it'd be amazing.
Yeah, cool. So where can people find you online?
They can find me on Twitter, and my handle is very easy because it's at Piccia, my name. If you learn how to spell it, that's it, Piccia. And because it's a fairly unique name, if you put just Piccia, just my name in Google, that my site, the first thing that comes up. So I'm quite easy to find. I'm also on Instagram as Piccia Draws. So that's the main places where you can find me, I would say.
Okay.
Is that a unique Italian name, or
it's not
does it
even
translate as something?
It's not an Italian name.
No.
Full stop. It's a nickname, and Italian people actually get very flummoxed when they hear it because it doesn't exist. It's just something that my father made up, and it's just stuck. It means like small, tiny, and I was small and tiny when it doesn't really, but sort of, and I sort of remained that way. So it just worked really well. But unfortunately, there are some languages in which it's a bit of a bad word. For instance, Spanish, which is a country I go to a lot, but I just change it to Piccias, something like that. It's fine. Yeah.
Cool. Gary, do you want to say who the guest on the next show is?
Yes. Give me a second, because we had to, it was going to be somebody, and then we had to change things around because there was dentist appointments and all sorts going on. So what we've ended up with next, in 2 weeks' time, 29th of July, is Paul Oaten is going to join us for the 29th of July.
Very interesting one.
Unfortunately, I will not be joining, as I have recently been headhunted, and as such, my full time will be devoted to working in a new job. I'm hoping that I will soon be able to rejoin the podcast, but for the time being, Gary will be carrying it on, and I don't know how exactly we're looking at carrying on. It might be that we have a guest presenter, it might be that we try and find a new permanent presenter, but hopefully sometime in the next couple of months I will be back, so you haven't heard the last of me. But yeah, so thank you.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Yeah. In actual fact, what Ben probably doesn't know, because we haven't discussed this yet, was actually Joey's going to step in, Joe Waltham, who I think guest presented last week and has been on the very first episode as well. She's going to kind of step in for the kind of foreseeable future until things may or may not change. So we'll look forward to having Joe on as well.
Great. Cool. So thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you.
And yes, any last words before we wrap up? Or
Thank you very much for having me. It's been a pleasure. Yes.
Brilliant. Well, thanks very much for joining us. Thank you for listening, and from me, goodbye.
Thank you very much for your time contributed to the podcast, Ben. And we'll see you, everybody else, in a couple of weeks' time.
Thank you very much.
Take care. Cheers. Bye-bye.
Bye now.